listen, the queer rights movement has done so much and advanced so much, and we've made so much headway, and it is terrifying and infuriating for me to see so much of that progress get lost. 100%. And I fear for what it means for the future of trying to regain some of that progress once we make it through whatever this is that we're getting through, the fascism. Hey y'all, welcome back to Queer 101, the podcast where we talk about any and everything under the sun, including queer art, queer culture, and queer literature. I'm Peppermint.
And I'm Hugh Ryan, aka Hugh the Historian. Oh, Peppermint, happy spring!
Honey, happy spring, honey. You know, we have been discussing a lot about politics lately, but that is really what is at the forefront of my mind. So I hope that that is okay with you again this time around because it's chaos, darling.
Oh, I mean, how could we be thinking about anything else right now? I mean, it's like, as we were discussing last week, it's systematic, the stripping of our rights piece by piece. It feels like a distraction technique, but it's not, whether it's Trump's war, whether it's Epstein, whether it's threatening to invade or actually invading sovereign countries or taking Greenland, it's just putting a stranglehold on everything, No one I know has been thinking about anything but politics for the last week. It's just inescapable.
You're 100% right. And I think that it's you mentioned distraction. I would say a word that I've been trying to use is diversion, because it is obviously real. The impact on all these things that they're doing, they're flooding of the zone. It's real. The impact is real. People are actually affected when they go through things like immigration and trans people losing rights. But at the same time, it's also it serves multiple purposes. So while it diverts our
Hmm.
attention, it also allows them more time to subdue us while they just rob us blind and take all of our money. I think that's
Yeah.
essentially what they're doing. So in this moment, we are here to essentially teach everybody via an historical perspective. But I thought maybe we just tackling one topic at a time might overwhelm people and add to the confusion. So I know that we're going to get heated, as we always do. It always ends up at the end of the episode. Um, it gets like, "Ugh!" So just get ready, folks. That's all
It's
I got
just
to
too
say.
much. It's too
It's going to
much.
get
It's
heated.
too much. No, you're right. I think that it's important that we think about these things globally and we think about them all at once, that we don't let ourselves get
Hmm.
diverted, but also take each part seriously. And the thing that I have been thinking about, and this goes back to when before we were discussing politics, when we were discussing heated rivalry
Hmm.
and discussing the Olympics and discussing queer visibility, do you know how we appear out in the world and how much some of what is happening right now to me feels like it's a slap in the face, that we've spent the last like 30 years fighting for visibility, and sometimes it feels like that visibility now is bringing us more danger than ever before. And I'm wondering, like, how do we hold those two things at the same time? Like, so much of the sort of quote unquote queer movement of the last 30 years was about making sure there was representation on television and representation in books and that people were out. That was the big chant that I remember from the 90s of come out wherever you are. And now it feels like that's changing. That there are people who don't want to be out, who for whom being out is dangerous. I mean, not that being out was ever not dangerous, right? But it feels like there's some slippage or change, and that roles are disappearing from television, and the representation we fought for is also being threatened. And yeah, it feels like all of this stuff that is happening around us, the stuff that focuses on queer people, some of it is really that we made space for ourselves. We fought for room on the TV, on the book lists, on the pop charts, in our families, in our churches, in our houses. And now, for a long time, the response was, okay, like, right, people are going to make some room. There's going to be some kind of assimilation, at least some gesture towards saying, like, yes, queer people deserve a seat at the table. And now I just don't know if visibility is hitting the same way. So I'm wondering, what are you thinking about it these days?
I agree. I mean, certainly right now, it's quite obvious that the visibility isn't hitting the same way. If you remember, you know, the Elon Musk and Doge initiative that was, it was even before Doge, though, because before Elon Musk came on board, or at least before Doge was announced, the Trump administration very early on had released a list of words that they literally wanted removed from all federal documentation, websites, just all those types of things. And I think that was part of the marching orders of Doge, was basically to go through all of the federal grants and basically federal sources of money that were going to be sent out, whether it's through aid or grants or different types of things, loans, and remove any of them that had, you know, women, black people,
Feminist,
you know,
transgender, yeah.
feminist, transgender, any of that language, you know, that they were calling woke language. And then we saw a couple of weeks ago now, I guess, the release of, I think in part, thanks in huge part to Matt Bernstein, I believe, who went through all 12 hours of the deposition of the two, I believe just two former Doge employees, these young men who were, I think, 20, not even graduated from college, I believe, who were tasked with canceling these loans and grants that were going to go out to, you know, nonprofits and organizations, community organizations and initiatives and programs that lost that money because they had these words associated with them. And it was these two guys that were in charge of them. I can't remember their names, but they're terrible. You probably
Yeah,
saw some of
Nathan
the
Kavanaugh
viral
and
clips
Justin
going around.
Fox. Do
Yes.
not
And
forget their
so,
names. Do not forget their faces, people.
yeah, let's not. And there's a whole
Hmm.
bunch of them. Certainly there's that one that they were calling Big Balls, that was, I think, overseeing the group. Anyway, literally being out and having inclusion and invisibility at that level in terms of, I mean, in the arts, in medical,
Hmm.
you know, organizations, whatever, any group, organization, initiative, whatever program that's going to be applying for and receiving or accepting federal funds is in jeopardy. And so we know that. We also know that the FCC, Brendan Carr, alongside with Trump, basically has either tweeted out or officially sent out or put in an executive order, basically a warning to any film and TV company, platform, channel that has, you know, queer or trans representation, that they need to remove that now. I know that there,
Hmm.
like a month ago, there was a move against Netflix because they had some kind of kids show that had some queer kids in there, two dads or something like that. And they were trying to get that removed. That Elon Musk was like heavily
Oh, right.
behind that initiative.
And didn't
And,
the head
you
of
know,
Pixar say that they had removed queer content from their newest film because they were afraid that it was going to like send families to therapy? Uh, and they're
yeah.
not even being directed
So
by the government to do that. This is just them, bending the knee preemptorily. I had a meeting 2 years ago with these folks calling themselves the Invisible Histories Project. They're incredible. They collect queer histories from the South. And they said to me, this was before the last election, and they said to the group of us in the room that they were here to tell us two things. One was that
mm,
Trump was absolutely going to win the election. They were like, don't fool yourselves. It's going to happen. And the
mm,
other one was that they had for years been working with universities around the South. And they said the goal was for the collections that they had found that needed to be housed, needed to be preserved, the goal was to get them into universities where they would be safe. And that now they had already been seeing throughout the South universities that were getting rid of queer collections in their archives and ones where they were stripping out all the metadata, all those words, gay, trans, feminist, so that they wouldn't get destroyed. But the end result was that once those words were stripped out of it, no one could ever find it again. They were basically hiding them within these archives. And they said to us, now is the moment. Like, we need to return to creating our own queer collections, queer archives, and that they had switched strategies. They were no longer going to try to work to get these materials out of private hands and into universities, into small local libraries, that instead we really needed to be working on private queer spaces because otherwise everything was going to be threatened that had once been kind of this gold standard. And it's that same thing you were talking about. It's like that visibility that makes these collections findable is now the thing that makes them endangered.
Yeah, I think that is a disadvantage. But I do also think that, I mean, maybe that's just a matter of us going back to the way that things were, because we know that there were always queer people. And we know that queer people were always in entertainment, film, television, in every single industry, even though they weren't able to be out for risk of being fired and things like that. And I also think that, like, we weren't necessarily, when I say we, I mean, I don't know. Listen, the queer rights movement has done so much and advanced so much, and we've made so much headway, and it is terrifying and infuriating for me to see so much of that progress get lost, 100%. And I fear for what it means for the future of trying to regain some of that progress once we make it through whatever this is that we're getting through, the fascism. But I do think that, if I look back at it from my recollection, and I could be wrong, queer representation was always there, but it was frequently negative and a stereotype based on the misgivings of the people that were putting it together. They always wanted to have the queer in the movie, in the film, in the thing, but they were just poorly written. They were inaccurate. They were not authentic to
It didn't come from
the
our
needs
point
of
of
the
view.
community. It didn't come from our point of view, but it was always there. And I think the biggest fight was not so much having a gay person on a TV show. It was making sure that queer representation was fair and accurate and not problematic and not offensive and all those things. And I think that was more the bigger fight of organizations like GLAAD. Now, GLAAD has definitely sort of, workshopped with many people in many industries, most notably entertainment, to get more representation. But I think their first initiative was better representation. And so I do think that even if they remove all of the queer and all of this from the scripts and all that, you're still going to have studios, TV shows, projects, things like that, still having some swishy gay. Now, will it be accurate representation? Probably not.
No.
But I don't think that they'll be able to. I don't think that they meaning, I think it would be very difficult to remove the notion of a queer person from the minds of everyone at the same time. And I think that there's too many people that don't want to do that, because if you do that, then you don't have a group that you can make an example of,
Mm-hmm. Also, I think that we see all these times where it's like, oh yeah, they say they want to ban drag, but also if frat boys want to put on like
they're
shitty
doing drag. That's what I'm
wigs,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like they want to be able to do it.
Exactly.
They want to have the control over it, but they don't want something coming from our point of view, coming from our critique, our actual reality, our lived lives. And I do think you're right that, we've always been there. 30 years ago, it was hard to find that kind of real representation in any mainstream sources. And so while I am very concerned about what is happening right now, and it is dangerous and it is going to hurt so many people, the change that we have seen in queer stories, queer visibility, queer power, in just 30 years is so major that I think that there are a lot of us who lived through a time where, like, yeah, those representations were not out there. They were not, and are used to that sort of like fighting to make better representations, fighting to make better TV, better books. And I think that knowledge, that experience, like having that within our lived lifetimes is going to be really essential for the next few years as these battles pop up everywhere. It's like, how do we navigate and how do we spread the word about queer life if we can't do it on CBS because Barry Weiss isn't going to let actual queer stories, even though she's a lesbian, on air? And
I think that sort of falls in line with mutual aid on a larger scale. Like, mutual aid is obviously basically just helping each other, but that really allows people to become people, connections, neighbors, whoever's helping each other, and to what degree. it allows them to become more self-sufficient in this modern era where it's like very capitalist and everything's corporatized and digitized and, you know, all these types of things. And so like thinking, oh my God, where would I get a cucumber from if there were no grocery stores, you know, that kind of thing. And so I think doing the same thing, where would we see a drag show if they shut down all of the bars? We'll figure it out. Like we're in the basement on such and such street, you know, like we'll make it work. And I, you know, so that's kind of just my response to what you were going to say. But I did want to move to the conversation about like drag and versus trans and representation, because I think that we were just to the point where we definitely arrived at a point where trans representation was distinct from drag, you know, because there was definitely a moment in time when those things were conflated.
Where this
for better or for worse.
Wong Fu.
And yeah, exactly. And now we obviously people understand the difference, and clearly, you know, the people who are anti-trans know the difference, and they were all up in arms about drag. And I knew it years ago, like in 2022, I remember saying, if we give that much fuel to this drag conversation about drag queens reading books, like that was really the main thing that they were focused on.
Story
then
hours.
We are going to open the door to debating. If we engage in a debate about drag queens, we are going to be inadvertently engaging in a debate and opening the door. We're taking the door off of the wall and just making an opening for trans to debate trans rights. And that's exactly what happened. They moved so seamlessly into attacking trans people that it didn't even. When's the last time you remember them talking about drag queens?
Bans on drag, maybe, but I think you're right, and I think that moment that you're talking about is so important historically, because it shows that same technique that they use over and over again, right? It's about drag queens and children. Protect the children. I mean, this is that constant refrain of like, whether it's protecting them from being trans or protecting them from predatory trans people, or 30 years ago it was the gay teachers who are going to recruit them or molest them, or, you know, 100 years ago we see the same stereotypes about immigrant communities. It's like over and over again people fall for this pretend concern about children, right? Not that we shouldn't be concerned about children. Of course we should be concerned about children. But like, we do all kinds of things all the time that we know harm children. Football in schools harms children's brains.
We send
and there
them
is
to
no uproar
we send them
about
to Catholic
that.
school. We send them to church.
Yeah.
We send them to, you know, take a picture with the president.
Yeah, all of these things, and no one cares.
Yes, no one
And yet,
really
that's
does
the
care.
edge. That's the thing they use all the time is, oh, the children. Oh, we have to watch out for the children. Right now, we're seeing it again where it's like the initial edge was, oh, we're worried about the medicalization of trans children. And now they're just all out coming for all trans healthcare everywhere of every age. You know, it's like that same using of children. It's gross. It's just gross to pretend to care about kids and then use them in that way.
Yeah, but we know now that, like, at least we know now that morally that there really isn't much of a leg to stand on the next time that they use some other group to talk about how defending the children, because as long as the Epstein files are out there and people are defending this president and defending the notion of hiding the Epstein files indefinitely, because the Epstein files are not out, they're hidden, they're redacted, they're not being straightforward. As long as that's happening, then I give everybody permission to say, fuck the kids. Fuck the kids. You're fucking the kids.
They feel
and
that
we don't
way
give
too.
a fuck about the kids. So who cares about fucking kids? Whatever's going to happen, if a kid's going to turn gay, let him turn gay. He's probably going to be safer than being around your fucking ass. So who cares about fucking children? Parents will have their children. Feed your kids, clothe your kids, get what you need. But the government is not helping you. They're making you poorer and making it harder to take care of kids. They're not giving you the health care that you need to make sure that your kids are healthy. There's nothing in this situation, in this governmental situation, the federal situation, and in that perspective that really does care for the kids, even if they were really genuinely thought that drag queens were harming the kids. Who cares?
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
the
they
kids
don't.
are out at a drag
They
show,
don't care at all.
but they're not healthy. They don't have a tooth in their head. They can't get any food, and they're out on the street because they don't have no place to live. So what are they doing about the kids? Nothing. So I don't want to hear shit about
It's the
kids.
same way
And the next time somebody comes up and says, "But the kids," say, "Fuck you and fuck the kids." It's about making sure that everybody has equal rights. That's it.
Yeah. They want to control bodies. I mean, that's it. They turned we hate abortion and women having control over their bodies into we are the party of pro-life. Pro-life is one of those terms that fucking pisses me off so goddamn much. I'm like, you're pro-life, you're
Right.
pro-war, you're pro the death penalty, you're pro people starving to death, people going without medication. The one thing you are in favor of is men having control over women's bodies. And now I think we're seeing this again with it's like, oh, we're worried about the kids. You're not worried about kids. You're worried about controlling the bodies of queer people, of trans people and
Fuck the
making it
kids.
impossible for them to exist. Fuck the Republicans who pretend to care. They're just hypocritical little assholes. And the people in their
It's
party,
not just the
I'm
Republicans.
just pisses me off. No, that's true. It is absolutely true. I do get more frustrated with them because they present themselves as the party of fit kids,
Oh
whereas I don't
yeah.
think Democrats ever do that. But it's that hypocrisy that drives me nuts. But you're right. It's the
Somehow the
Democrats
Democrats
just
have
as much. I
earned
mean, they're
the
not.
notion and the name of being, pro LGBT, and typically liberal policies are the ones that push things forward. But, the modern establishment Democrats, especially the elected officials right now, are doing very little to protect any of these groups that the Republicans seem to be targeting. I mean, if the Republicans are so obviously targeting women's rights and trans rights and queer rights and with all these different, if so obviously doing it so loudly, and it should be very easy to see where the target is and to protect the fucking target. But for some reason, the Republicans are like, on Friday, we're gonna take all the women's rights away. It's Monday, it's Tuesday, it's Wednesday, it's Thursday, it's Friday, and the Democrats didn't do shit. And the Republicans advertise it
Because
every
they
day.
were
On
waiting for
Friday at
the
noon, we're going to
election.
be there. And exactly. And so
They're waiting
I
for
don't
the
want to hear
election,
shit
and
about
in that moment, they're going to vote really hard, and then they'll do something. And that is the one thing
Yeah,
that will actually be done. And it won't mean
I'm
anything. It won't mean
tired.
any changes. Nothing will come around.
Yeah,
It is so nice to know who actually has your back and who doesn't. Like Pride, I was thinking about this as an example.
yeah.
It sucks that all this money is getting pulled from Pride, and I've talked to a lot of local prides where they were dependent on corporate money and did not realize that
In
until
order
that
to
was taken
exist.
away, how fragile they were and precarious that was. But also, like, I wanted them out. Fuck them. They never cared. And it's so much nicer to have a pride that, yes, might be small and might be DIY and might be a little ragged in certain ways, but is actually queer and is political and is for and of the community and not this kind of. Do you ever go to what is it called? The Resist Pride. I forget what they called it. The alternative Pride that started a few
Uh-huh.
year ago in New York.
I have
It's
been.
just so much more fun. The energy of it is so much better.
The
And that,
march. They call it
yeah,
the march.
yeah,
Instead of
I
the
think it's just a
parade.
much better sort of situation, and I don't know, much more enjoyable. Even though, sadly, a lot less money for gigs to pay performers and to pay. Like I used to get paid to do events around Pride all the time, and that has not happened the last few years. So, like everyone else, I miss the money, but the event is so much better.
Yeah, I think it'll be fine about finding a happy medium in those things and allowing corporations and corporate money to be taken and accepted, no strings attached, without having the presence of corporations and if corporations do want to be involved, it can't be a commercial. It can't be paying for placement to just be a commercial. It has to be something that is, like, we'll accept your money, but you are agreeing to donate food without your corporate name on it to the homeless LGBT shelter for the next 10 years. You're responsible for
And you're
that dinner.
simultaneously
Every,
not giving money to the anti-gay politicians. Like you can't show up and be like, "Oh, but we don't give benefits to queer employees," right? Like you can't come to
exactly.
Pride and
No,
actually
no, no,
hate
no,
us.
no. I hope that that's how people will, operate in the future. I mean, I don't specifically mean Pride or the Pride organizers for New York Pride or other prides. I mean, just in general, I hope that the community will have that sort of outlook when they see. And I remember people being so like disgusted by seeing corporate when the New York Pride parade became like bank after bank after bank after bank float, and you were like, what is this? It just felt like so weird.
Hmm.
But I think the response was not as from the community, might not have been as nuanced as it needed to be. I don't think it should just be like, corporations and that's it, because I think people got like an icky feeling from seeing the corporate signs, knowing that
Yeah.
everything was being sort of rainbow washed. But I do think that now, this time around, we can be really strategic with how we engage with them, if we decide to engage with them at all. You know, and you know, this year will be the sort of testing, the proving grounds for that, because I think this year there is no corporate no corporate floats or anything in the parade.
I think in some ways it kind of goes back to, you know, those first, like I think about in the early 90s, it was like Absolute Vodka putting out some queer ads and then Subaru putting out a lesbian ad. And those companies, while I don't love corporate culture or capitalism or much of what they were doing, in those moments, making that decision was actually a political act, right? Those were companies that,
It was.
frustrating as they were in many other ways, it meant something for them to do that. And I think we're moving into a moment now where we can really evaluate, like, oh, companies like Target, like you can see how shallow their commitment was, how little they actually cared. As
Shallow.
soon as they thought it was worth it to them to abandon, you know, the Black community, the queer community, they were out. And now they're regretting it. And now we're going to see like what communities, what companies step up in meaningful ways, change their policies, protest them,
I think that
you know?
those days are done, because corporations don't have one voice now. Corporations have a Spanish language channel, a French language channel, and a German language channel. And they'll have a different message. On the German language channel, they'll be like, we hate those Frenchies. And on the French channel, they'll be like, we hate those Germans. And people are like, you know, so it's about these siloed groups of people that they're able to gin up and be like, everybody shop at Target or whatever, you know, thing it is they're promoting. And they have a different poster for different ones. That's in effect what happened with like Bud Light, for instance. Bud Light has been a supporter, a contributor, a corporate sponsor, I should say, of Pride for a long time. And so but it was just the fact that people were able to see on one channel that they would have never, ever, 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 ever seen, having, you know, a trans person on the thing. They would have never seen that. Whereas it's kind of tantamount maybe to like, you know, Subaru putting a lesbian full page ad in Advocate magazine, like in the 90s, before Advocate magazine had a website. And the straights were never going to see that. They were never going to see that. They are not gone. I mean, some of them were gone, but most of them were not going to go pick up that magazine. You know, they were going to miss it. And so I think these
Now
days
that silos have fallen apart. Like, I think
You
that
think
like
they have fallen
everyone
apart?
hears about. Yeah, I mean, think about Dylan Mulvaney and what happened to her. You know, it's like in 20 years ago, straight people would never have heard about her getting that can of Budweiser, you know, but today,
No, that
and
was my
Bud backed
point.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think we're seeing like
Right.
as it becomes obvious that oh, we can't just like speak out of one side of our
You
mouth
know
here and
why?
one side of
Because
our
it's
mouth
the
here.
algorithm. The algorithm doesn't protect the silos anymore. The algorithm intentionally, I don't know if you're on Threads, but you know, it like comes with Instagram. On Threads, they're legit not showing you any content from your friends. They're like, here's someone who you will hate. Here's their
This will
post,
piss
and
you
that's
off.
it. Yeah, and so
Ugh.
it's legit. That's what they're doing. So obviously, you're right. Like the silos can't work in that situation if they're constantly trying to, you know,
Get us
start an
angry.
uprising.
And the algorithm, all it wants to do is make money. It just wants to keep us there. And anger is the easiest way to activate us, to keep us there, to keep us clicking and pissed off. And it's one of those things where it's like I have found myself seriously stepping back from a lot of different kinds of social media, which is hard because, you know, our
Hmm.
careers, sadly, you have to be on it to a certain degree. But it's like I don't
Yeah.
want, I found myself constantly being activated into outrage by things that I could not affect or do anything about, stupid comments by stupid people. And I would spend the rest of the day like fucking spun out trying to like hunt down something that I felt like I could send to this anonymous asshole on Twitter to make them change their mind. They probably weren't even a
Who's
person.
not even
There
a
was
real
nothing
person,
I could
most
do that would
likely.
change their mind. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that activation like was ruining me, you know, like I would lose whole days to it. And
Yeah.
now I find
I understand.
you know, and I love social media. I think, you know, the ability of it to spread information, to let folks know about political movements or queer life in places they wouldn't otherwise, to get activists together, the way we saw Twitter being used during the Arab Spring. Like there are some great parts to it too, but I more and more these days am seeing the ways in which like I don't like it and I don't want to be on it, and it causes me to have all of these like emotional responses to things that are awful, but are also like not in my world or anything I can do anything about. And instead, I get fixated on those instead of the things that are closer to me that I might actually be doing something about. And so I just have had to really diminish my social media time.
I'm happy for you. Listen, I go back and forth between that because I do think in 10 years, me being the not online person, is there a world where we're going to be flying around in spaceships and human beings won't actually leave their living abodes, their living quarters, and we're just going to be plugged into a computer, and 100% of our interactions will come from through a screen? I think that is a possibility in the future. You know what I mean? Where being in plugged into something is going to be necessary for social function. But it's not necessarily, it isn't now. I mean, socially, it is necessary to have an understanding of what the rest of society is doing. But clearly, it is possible to live and breathe and be born and eat and have experienced joy without ever having to even have. You don't even need a phone. In some regards, it means things will probably be a lot slower and a lot less instant for whoever does that, but it is not necessary. So when the electricity goes out or when these corporations completely turn into the devil, then we know that we have another option, which means just take us back to the digital dark ages, I guess. And on the other hand, that brings up, we had a question on our brief about does constant discourse online distort reality? Does constant online discourse distort reality? And I
Like a
don't
tongue
really know
twister.
if it does. Yeah, it is a tongue. I don't know if it does or not, but I do think that it does. It really. I hope the question is presented, and I hope people will be able to sort of examine for themselves what does action mean in real life. What is effective action? And can they be inspired into action from their conversations and posts that they see online? And hopefully
Yeah.
the answer is yes. And sometimes the action is just retweet this and share it. And
Hmm.
then obviously sometimes it means doing more, like at the bare minimum, calling your damn useless senator to at least let them know that that we know. Um, but, you
Yeah.
know, I don't know besides that,
I think it's true
if
though
it,
that it activates,
well, go
and
ahead.
I hope that people then do more. Right? Because I worry that there was a time period. I think it's less now, but there was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, a period where people were like, "I'm an online activist." Like my whole activism is Twitter, and I think that's less now. That's just my sense that the people who are like doing that, who really care, are also actually doing things that are mutual aid, whether it's online or offline. I'm not saying it has to be, but like they're not just social media activists, and that the people who are just social media activists or the bots because they've taken up that job are a little more. We can tell what they are. They're not as like that we ignore them or to avoid them. So I don't know if the constant discourse is distorting reality, but I hope that we've moved away from the discourse being the entirety of the action. That there's more people who are like, if I'm going to be annoyed about this online, I'm going to take it into my real world and make changes somehow, either in my community or at my job or just in how I process the world. Because I know that for me, otherwise, if I don't do that, I just end up like holding all the emotions from whatever it was I saw online and not having anything to do with them and like taking them out of my partners and my cats.
I think that one thing that we should do in the future is, I mean, I know what I did because I'm preparing for the big one. Before we close out here, is people should look up and research the sort of like online or offline mesh network of in terms of communication. There's devices that are connected. I mean, it's basically the next evolution of the ham radio, which I never had any context for what a ham radio was in my life, but it's apparently like similar technology, which allows people to use these sort of like relay networks electronically to send messages, individual message packets to, from one signal to the next signal to the next signal until it gets to its destination. And it's not centralized, so it's not on. It doesn't use the internet. It doesn't use traditional. It uses some other airwaves, and something that's like can be encrypted and private and unique as it goes through. And this is a way that we can communicate. I bought a bunch of those radios, honey. And so I'm just waiting.
I
I'm
still
trying to figure
have
out how
a
to use them.
I've got a short wave radio. I don't know if it'll ever actually be useful, but I was like, no, just in case, holding on to it. It is
They're
100
always
years
using
old.
that in my like in movies or TV shows about like the zombie apocalypse. Somebody's using a shortwave radio. We're in the
I don't really know how to
basement.
use it, but I have it.
That's good to
But
know.
you're right. I
Make
got to
my
check
way to
out these mesh
Brooklyn.
networks. I don't know what a mesh
Check
network
them
is. That's
out.
what I'm going to be Googling when we get off of here. So you should also, if you're at home going, what the fuck is a mesh network? Google along with me. Let's find out together and see if we need to buy one or set one up. I'm not sure which one it is. I think, in terms of my preparations for this like coming apocalypse, I don't know what to do or what is the right thing to do, but this year has really been about for me trying to spend as much time in person with people that I care about as I can, whether that is like having a dinner with people just to check in,
Mhm.
or like going to organizing meetings, meetings that sometimes I would attend on Zoom previously. If I can be there in person, I try to go in person now. It just feels to
Yeah.
me like spending time with people and really hashing things out in person where we can be nuanced and we can be angry when we're angry and sad when we're sad and not have it captured and then sent around the world at the wrong moment. That means something to me. And it's not a technological preparation. It's not like a prepper's preparation. I'm going to starve to death in the apocalypse, but like I'm hoping someone around me will actually remember who I am and care about me because we spent time together. And that feels to me like the best way I'm going to get ready for this.
Well, I'm going to get ready to go because I got to catch the train. But I'm so glad that everybody listened to this. Thank you so much. Please listen to share this, like this, do all the things, and we will talk to you on the next
Yes.
episode.
Next
Bye.
Tuesday, join us. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
This podcast is part of Pride House Media, hosted by us, Peppermint and Hugh, produced and edited by Josh Rosenzweig, with original music composed by Nell Balaban.
If you enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a rating and a review. It really helps others discover the show.
You can stay connected and join the conversation by following us at Peppermint 24/7 or write to us at questions@queer101podcast.com.
Thank you for listening. And remember, our history is your history. Stay proud, stay curious, and we'll see you next time on Queer 101.